All right, everyone, it's your boy Rome. Today we're going to be taking a look at exactly how I set up my Wacom tablet for retouching. So let's get right to it. Hopefully we can get this live down to about, 20 or so minutes. And that's our target goal, so let's go for that. As you know, these lives are never scripted, so we never know what's going to happen. All right, guys, let's get right to it. All right, so first thing we're going to look at is the pen settings. So I'm going to go over to the Wacom desktop center, and I'm just going to open. So as you can see here, there's a number of different panels under settings. You have orientation, you have touch settings, pen settings, express key settings, your touch ring, as well as your on-screen controls. And then there down here at the near the bottom is also your run setup wizard. That's if you're just starting out and you want to set everything up from new. Now you have some other links further down for tutorials, user help, and things like that. But for right now, what we're going to stick with is getting everything set up. So the first thing we're going to look at is the pen settings. So I'm using another monitor, I have to pull these all over. Let me minimize this a little bit. And then I should be able to bring that over. There we go. Okay. So here's our pen settings for the standard pen settings. So if I'm looking at the pen from here, if you're looking at where it says all other, that means everything other than Photoshop would be applied to this. So if I was using a browser or something like that, then all of these would be the same. Let's reconnect. Like I said, it's not scripted, guys. Okay, so here we go. Right now, the default is right click and double click. That's what the pen has set for it. But for my Photoshop, I have it set up completely different. But also under the default, under eraser, I have that still set as eraser. And for mapping, right now it's mapping to both of the screens. So I'm going to switch that over here in just a second once I get into Photoshop. So let's just click on Photoshop here. We're still under pen. So since we're already under mapping, let's go ahead and set up the mapping. So here we're under screens. I'm going to see, I think this is seeing that as the first monitor. Yes. Okay, so now it's the entire tablet is connected to this larger screen, and it's ignoring the MacBook screen because I'm using a secondary monitor. And I'm not using a portion of the screen, I'm actually using the entire tablet itself. But as many of you know, you can go in here and you can set up a portion where you can decide if you want a specific area of the tablet to be selected. So in my case, I want it to be the full tablet, I'm not using just the upper part of the tablet or the lower part of the tablet, but you can choose that. You can go in here and you can decide exactly how much of the tablet you want to select. But we're just going to leave it at full. And then we're going to go back over to our pen settings. So if you see here on my top button, which is the one nearest to the nib, I have a modifier set up, and that's set for Control Option plus M. And I'll show you what that does. Let me open Photoshop here real quick. So if we go back to Photoshop, so I had the modifier set up here, which is Control Option M, and then a right click for the top button. My pen pressure is set just a little below the higher setting, the middle setting here. That gives me really good pen strokes without having to, press so hard on the keyboard. On the tablet itself. And let's say I'm in my brush mode. I can just press that top button nearest to the nib, click, and I can pull to the side to increase the size of the brush, or to the left or right to increase or decrease the size of the brush. Now for the brush density, I just go up for soft, and I can come down for hard. So it just really depends on, wherever I am. If I want to, really get a small brush in there and I want it to be a soft brush or a hard brush, it gives me that control by just pressing that one button. I can go right in and adjust the pen size, the brush size. So let's drop this down real quick. Okay. So let's go over to our function keys. And under function, right now everything is set to default. So the way the tablet normally comes, it would come with the Wacom desktop center, the settings, precision mode, display toggle. That's a switch between different displays if you're using multiple displays. You'd have your modifier keys as well, shift, command, option, and then you have a pan and scroll, for scrolling the web or something like that. But obviously most of those type of commands won't do us any good in Photoshop. So if we also look at the ring settings, the touch ring, it has auto scroll, rotate. It has whatever this keystroke here is for cycling layers. Well, that would stay up pretty much the same for Photoshop. And then we have brush size. And when we get to this aspect of it, we'll discuss this a little bit further. And display toggles, it's just basically showing you here how it will switch between the two monitors. And then your on-screen controls, depending on which of these on-screen controls you use, whether it's the app shortcuts, brush tools. If you have one of the screened tablets, the third one would apply to that. Express menu is basically a bunch of little menus that pop up where you can choose different things, and then you can go in and customize these so that they work better for your workflow. Then you have the Photoshop colorist, you have Photoshop draw, you have your radial menu, and then you have the Wacom screen keys. So all of these are different things that you can set up to be, controlled by one of your touch panel keys, or it can be also associated with your touch ring. But for Photoshop, let's go back to the express keys. So on the very top key, I have it set up to basically how my hand is placed on the tablet, nearest to the tablet. So most people would probably use the keys that I have selected down here at the last 4 keys as their top 4 keys. But because of where my hand is placed on the desk, I like these 4 keys down here to be the ones that are quickly accessible to me. So like undo, redo, stamp layer. So I have a keystroke here for stamp layer, and then I have another, the 4th key for center photo. And then if we go back up, I have for toggling between the layers, I have layer up, layer down. Then I do have one for the radial menu. And then the 4th one I have set for X, and that just allows me to switch between black and white or whatever 2 colors are in my palette whenever I'm doing some type of dodging and burning, or if I'm doing some frequency separation. Now as far as the touch ring, I have it set up pretty much the way it was in standard. I didn't change anything, but you can go in here and you can change just to scroll, zoom, rotate, a keystroke. You can define an application if you want it to open. You can disable it, or you can set it to whatever the default was. If you forgot once you went in and started changing things and you didn't remember what it was, just click on default, it'll set it back. And that applies to all 4 of them. We're already familiar with what the display toggle does, as well as the on-screen controls. Now, as far as the touch, I don't really use the touch a lot on a tablet like this, because I'm, a lot of times I'm resting my hand on it. So I don't want the touch to constantly be going off from, palm, and finger touches and things like that. So I've left that disabled for now. Now, if I was using something other than Photoshop, I probably, if I was using just like surfing the web or, any of those other applications I would use, then I would just, probably turn the touch back on. But I'm relatively close to my MacBook, so it's not that difficult for me to just come up here to the trackpad and just, make adjustments or whatever I need to. Now, where you see where it says applications here, you're not limited to Photoshop or Lightroom or to Capture One. You can add literally any application you want to here. So if we go back over to our touch panel, so we have our gestures, touch panel. So if we go back to our functions, and let's say I have Photoshop, I have Final Cut, and I have Capture One. Now with Final Cut, I haven't really changed a lot of things yet. I'm going to go through and pick probably my most frequently used 8 keystrokes, and I will add those to Final Cut. But for right now, it's just set to the default. And same as with Capture One, I don't use a lot of keystrokes in Capture One, but I know there's a lot of really beneficial keystrokes that you can use in Capture One. So that will be another video, 2 separate videos, one for Final Cut and one for Capture One, as to how I use those. But here in Photoshop, like I said, the most common ones that we use is going to be, undo, redo, stamp layers, center photos, especially when you're zooming in to do some retouching and you want to expand the image back out again. You can just hit that one button and boom, everything jumps back out. Now, what I recommend starting out is that you maybe, create yourself a little cheat sheet where you have like a little, one of these little notepads, and you just write down, what each one of these do. And then that way it'll show up for you easily enough. Now on this Mac, I don't know if it's related to the beta software that I'm running, but it does not always show the screen whenever I'm, if I click on a button or something. So it doesn't, the whole display screen doesn't pop up. Like in some cases, like if you run your finger around something or you touch something on the screen, then the display will show up on the screen, letting you know exactly what it is you're touching. All right, so let's go over this really quick. So as we look at this image, say we're going to do some retouching on this image, the first thing we would look at is, obviously what do we need to take care of? We see there's a bit of acne on her face. This is over exaggerated for the image, but you get the idea. So what I would normally do here is I would just come in here, Command J, and duplicate this layer. And then I would grab my either the spot healing or the healing brush or even the patch tool. It just depends on, which tool you want to use. So we're just going to go with the spot healing brush because that's going to be a lot faster and it works a lot better with the tablet. So I'm going to increase, let's say we're going to make the pen size about there, and we're going to make it relatively hard. And we can just then at that point just come in and just start painting in and touching up some of these areas where we see the acne. And your pen pressure has a lot to do with this. So even if your pen size is a little bit larger, it doesn't really matter as much because a lot of this is applied, solely by the pen pressure, the amount of pen pressure that you apply. And if you have your pen pressure, your smoothing, your other settings set up in Photoshop, and I'll show you what I mean by that here in just a second. So let me get this last little bit of acne. Okay, so here on the chin. Okay, let's say we got all of that. There's a little bit more we could do. We could go in and further touch that up, but a lot of this we can get in our frequency separation. But if we go over to our pen settings and we look at exactly, let me close this. So if we start to look at what we have here under brushes as an example. So let's go over to our brushes, and I have my shape dynamics turned on. I have the minimum diameter set to 30%. I have that also set to pen pressure. I have transfer turned on. I have that set to pen pressure, and everything is, zeroed out. And also the flow jitter is also controlled by pen pressure. And if we go down to smoothing, I also have that set to pen pressure. So what that allows me to do is to go in and just gently touch upon an area. I'm just using a color now, but I can gently touch upon an area, softly, or I can be really more aggressive with it and you get a really strong color. So it's the same thing as when you're applying this, if you were doing any other type of retouching, whether you're doing dodging and burning or whatever the case it will be, you're going to have that kind of control over it. But then the other thing that you can always do is go back to your color layer and you can grab your lasso tool. And then from your lasso tool, then you can come in and then start making selections to really to further soften the skin. So let's say if we wanted to come in and grab this area here, we'll just go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And now you're going to determine how blurry you actually want this area to be. So if you zoom in a little bit, so originally this was at 12, so let's say we're going to bring that up to around 30. Let's just extreme. Let's do 50. And that's way up there. No, that's too much. Okay, 37 is where I'm going to stick. Okay, so now I can just further go in and select other areas. Then you can right click and go down to Gaussian blur. And then just keep going. Remember, avoid the eyes. So we're going to go in here, right click, Gaussian blur. Same as with the rest of the face. And the feather on this lasso tool, I have it set at 25 pixels. Now you may not need it to be that high. You'll just have to kind of figure it out on your own. What's going to work best for your image. You may be able to use something as low as 18, but it's there for you so that you can then, better feather. So if you're grabbing an area, you don't have to be 100% precise. It's still going to get the majority of that area. All right, so the hand looks really good. The skin looks good. I still see that little patchy area there, so I'm going to go over that once we create a stamp layer, and I'm just going to fix that with the clone tool. But that wasn't the real purpose of this video. The purpose of this video tonight was to show you guys exactly how I set up my Wacom tablet, and I think we went over exactly everything that I've done so far. Now, there may be some other things that I may do in the future. When it comes to some of the pin settings, I don't really think that I'm going to do any controls or anything like that. Right click and to adjust the pin size, the brush size is perfect for me when I'm doing retouching. Now I saw someone earlier who had used this where it says erase here. They just did a keystroke. And then the keystroke was undo. And just say, okay, well, that would be undo. So you would then just turn it over, and then you would just use the top of the pen to undo something. But it's basically the same thing as what it was before, which is erase. So, it just depends on how you want it. So we can go back, we're going to set that back to default. And it goes back to erase, like I said before. But hopefully, guys, you learned a little bit of something, from this quick live here on Saturday. And I will, if you guys are interested or you want it for some reason, if you have a Wacom tablet, especially if you're using the medium or the large, and you want my settings, I can save the settings and make them available to you where you can download them. And in the future, once you have your tablet set up, you definitely want to go in and save your settings under backup. So if you go under backup, you can back up your settings, restore settings, or reset the settings back to factory. But if you download my settings, you would just use them under restore. You would just click on restore, and then you would go to wherever you downloaded those preferences to be, and then just click on it and hit open, and then it would install them on your device. But if you saw how I have it set up, it's relatively simple. It's not difficult for you guys to do this yourself, so you can do this step by step and follow along. And I mean, there's a ton of videos out there on the Wacom tablet that's been around for a long time. So with that said, I'm going to bring this live to an end. We're at 31 minutes. That's a pretty good time, I think. I will edit this down a little bit, for social media. So you'll find some clips on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I may even rebroadcast this on Twitch, who knows. But I want you guys to stay safe, take care of yourselves, wash your hands, wear a mask, and get out there and create something amazing. If you have not downloaded the actions yet, feel free to go to the link in the bio and download the actions. There is your frequency separation. You have 16-bit, 8-bit. You have your dodge and burn. You have your eye whitening, and you also have your lip color. So once you download those, you can just install them into Photoshop and use them as much as you like. And if you guys create something and you post it somewhere, leave a link, so that I can take a look at some of the things you guys have created. All right, until next time, again, stay safe, wash your hands, take care of your loved ones, and create something amazing. I will catch you guys in the next live. Peace. I'm out.